She felt the cold before she understood what had happened. Champagne, expensive and deliberate. Alicia Collins looked down at her dress. The cold spread across her chest, and she stood completely still for one full second. The woman holding the empty glass was already turning to the room with an expression that said, "Oops," without meaning a single syllable of it. The murmur that followed was small and immediate. The particular sound of a room full of important people deciding whether to pretend they hadn't seen. Alicia looked up. The woman was polished in the way of someone who had been groomed for resumes far more important than this one. Beautiful in the particular way that had been carefully maintained, rather than simply inherited. Her expression carried the full unbothered certainty of someone who had never once had to move for anyone and had no intention of starting tonight. "These events have a certain dress code," she said. Her voice was precise and unhurried, and carried perfectly to the nearest cluster of guests. "But I suppose not everyone gets the memo." The room was listening. Alicia felt it. The quiet, the turning attention, the particular social weight of a moment designed to make her small in front of every important person in Seoul. She took the cocktail napkin from the nearest table, pressed it once to her chest, set it down. Then she looked at this woman with the full, unhurried attention of someone who had made a quiet decision about how much of herself she was willing to spend on this moment. "Excuse me," she said simply, and turned to leave. The woman stepped in front of her. Her hand found Alicia's arm, gripping, not touching, and the contact was deliberate and the intention behind it unmistakable. "I'm not finished with you." The room went completely still, and then a voice arrived from across it, low, unhurried, carrying the specific weight of a man who had never once needed to repeat himself. "Don't touch her." 4 words, no volume, no threat in the tone because the tone itself was the threat. The grip released. Alicia turned, and the man crossing the room toward her was doing it with the particular, unhurried certainty of someone who had never once needed to rush to make a point. Tall, broad, dark suit that announced nothing and communicated everything. The guests between them stepped back without being asked. He stopped beside her. He looked at the woman who had been holding Alicia's arm. Not with anger. With something colder and more final than anger. And the woman looked back at him and something in her composure fractured, quietly and completely. The room held its breath. Then Alicia looked up at him, and the recognition arrived like something physical, not slow, immediate. The kind that bypasses the brain entirely and lands somewhere more honest. Chicago, she thought, 3 years ago. A courthouse corridor and a business card and a case she had won in 11 days. He was looking at her with the same recognition, the same certainty. The expression of a man who had been waiting for a moment he didn't fully believe would come. And here it was, standing in front of him in a ruined dress in the middle of the most important room in Seoul. Neither of them said a word. The room was still watching. The woman with the empty champagne glass was still standing there. And something between Alicia Collins and this man had just been named in front of every powerful person in this city, without either of them opening their mouths. "Stay with me. Because you need to understand how these two people found each other, and what it is going to cost them both before this is over." Before we continue, where in the world are you watching from? Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel, and hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. I'll really appreciate it. Alright, thank you. Let's jump back in. 3 years earlier, Chicago. Alicia was a junior partner at one of the most respected corporate law firms in the city, and she had not gotten there by accident. She had gotten there by reading everything twice, finding what other people missed on the first pass, and being the kind of attorney who treated every case like the most important argument she had ever made, because she believed it was. She was at her desk at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday when her managing partner called. Last-minute case, Korean national. Asset freeze proceedings in federal court. The client's name on the file was Kwon Seo-jin. She didn't recognize it. She opened the file and read for 2 hours. And by the time she set it down, she had found 3 structural holes in the prosecution's financial trail argument, and a quiet certainty that there was a 4th one she hadn't located yet. She took the case. She found the 4th hole on day 9. She won in 11. Outside the courtroom afterward, her client stopped her in the corridor. He was tall, composed, the kind of man whose stillness communicated more than most people's movement. He thanked her. She told him it was her job. He asked what made her take it on such short notice. "The other side's argument had 3 holes," she said. "I wanted to see if I could find them all." He looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. "Not much, just enough." "Did you?" "I found 4, she said. He was quiet for a moment. The particular quiet of someone filing something important away. Then he asked for her card. She gave it. They parted ways. That night she sat at her kitchen table and Googled his name properly for the first time and read for 2 hours without stopping. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the quiet of her apartment for a long moment with the particular feeling of someone who has just understood that the room they were standing in was significantly larger than they realized. He never called. She told herself it didn't matter. She was still telling herself that 3 years later, when the brief landed on her desk with the name Kwon Holdings at the top, and her managing partner's voice on the phone saying, "You leave for Seoul. On Monday, Collins. This one matters." Joe Collins picked her up from the airport in a car he had borrowed from a colleague, because he wanted to look impressive and had almost pulled it off. He was her older brother by 4 years, and he worked in international finance in Seoul. And he had been calling her since he saw the brief, with the frequency of a man who was genuinely concerned and also genuinely unwilling to say so directly. "You know who Kwon Seo-jin is," he said. It was not a question. "We've met," Alicia said. The silence that followed lasted almost 30 seconds. "Alicia, that is not an answer. It's the one I have." He talked. He talked the way Joe always talked when he was worried, with the slightly elevated energy of someone who wanted to land a point without appearing to try. The Kwon name, the weight of it in Seoul, the way certain rooms changed their temperature when he entered. The things people said quietly in the right circles about what Kwon Holdings actually was, beneath the gleaming, legitimate surface. Alicia listened, filed it, said very little. At the hotel there was an envelope waiting at the front desk. No name on the outside. She opened it in the elevator. A gala invitation, heavy cardstock, and one handwritten line at the bottom. "I thought you might find the room interesting." She stood in the elevator holding the card as the doors opened on her floor. She set it on the nightstand, picked it up again, set it down. Then she went to the gala. And that is where the champagne found her dress. And a man crossed a room and said 4 words that stopped everything. "And now you know how they got here." The morning after the gala, Alicia was in the hotel lobby with her briefcase and her first acquisition meeting in 40 minutes when she felt her before she saw her. Ha-yoon sat down across from her without being invited to. No champagne this time, no audience. Just the two of them in a quiet corner of the lobby, and Ha-yoon's voice dropped to something that sounded almost like warmth. "I want to apologize," she said, "for last night." Alicia looked at her. "Okay, and I want to be honest with you." Ha-yoon set her bag down with the ease of someone settling in for a conversation she had rehearsed, woman to woman. "You seem intelligent, so I'll skip the performance." She paused. Her eyes were steady and her expression was almost kind, and both of those things were exactly as deliberate as the champagne had been. "Seo-jin and I have a 2-year arrangement," she said. "Both families. It's not something that dissolves because of a moment at a gala." Another pause timed perfectly. "You're here for a deal. A few weeks. I understand the appeal of his attention, everyone does. But you're walking into something you don't have the full picture of. And when you leave, I'll still be here." Alicia let the silence sit for a moment after she finished, held her gaze without expression. Then she picked up her briefcase and stood. "Thank you for the warning," she said. She walked toward the door. She did not look back. But something Ha-yoon had said had landed. Not because she believed the warning, but because it wasn't entirely wrong. She didn't have the full picture. And Alicia Collins had never in her life made a move without the full picture. She filed it, and kept walking. The acquisition meetings started that afternoon, and Alicia was the sharpest person in the room. And everyone present understood it within the first 20 minutes. Seo-jin attended the second meeting. He said very little. He watched her work, the way she built an argument from its foundation, the way she caught a contractual inconsistency on page 47 that his own legal team had missed. And something in his expression settled into something that had been looking for a place to land. Afterward, he appeared beside her in the corridor outside the conference room. "Have you eaten?" he asked. She hadn't. They ended up at a quiet restaurant 3 blocks from the building. Not arranged, not performed, just 2 people making a practical decision in the same direction. The conversation started professional, May-graded. He asked about Chicago. She told him about the 4th hole, the one she had never used in court because she hadn't needed it. He listened the way people rarely listened, completely, without waiting for his turn. She asked about the invitation. "I've known you were lead counsel for 3 weeks before you landed," he said. She looked at him across the table. "You could have called, I know. 3 years, Seo-jin, you had my card." He was quiet for a moment. "3 years ago I wanted to call you," he said. "Not about the case. A beat. Your card," said attorney. "What I wanted to call you for had nothing to do with law. And I didn't know how to bridge the distance between those 2 things." The silence after that carried 3 years of weight, and neither of them pretended otherwise. They stayed 2 hours longer than either of them had planned. Joe texted her 4 times. She read them on the walk back to the hotel and replied with 2 words. "I'm fine." He sent back 3. "That's not nothing." She put her phone in her bag and didn't reply. But she was almost smiling when she did it, and the night air was cold, and Seoul was spread out around her, and something that had been sitting quietly in her chest for 3 years had shifted its position. Ha-yoon watched it happen and went very still. She couldn't go after Alicia publicly. Seo-jin's 4 words at the gala had already made clear what that cost her. So she changed her approach entirely. She went quiet, and quiet from Ha-yoon was significantly more dangerous than anything she had done with the champagne. It started small. Alicia received the wrong meeting time for a key acquisition session. Not obviously wrong, just 30 minutes off. Enough to walk in late, enough to look unprepared in front of the room. Alicia caught it the night before when she cross-referenced her calendar with the original brief. She showed up on time, said nothing about it. A key document she had formally requested from the Quan legal team disappeared into processing for 3 days. Something that should have taken hours. Alicia worked around it without complaint and without revealing that she understood exactly what was happening. Joe noticed first. He always noticed. He appeared at her hotel door on a Wednesday evening, with food she hadn't asked for, and the expression of someone who had been carrying a concern all day. "Someone's making your job harder," he said. "I know," Alicia said. "Are you going to say something to Seojin?" "No, Alicia, I handle my own problems, Joe." She took the food from him. "Always have." He sat on her sofa and looked at her the way he had been looking at her since they were children, with the particular helpless protectiveness of someone who knows the person they love is capable of handling everything and still wishes they didn't have to. "At least eat something," he said. She sat beside him. They ate. Neither of them said anything else about it. But in the quiet of her room later that night, Alicia sat at the desk with a document spread in front of her and felt it. The cold clarity of a woman who has identified a pattern and made a decision about what to do with it. Ha-yoon was not going to stop, that much was certain. The question was what she was building toward. Alicia was going to find out before she got there. 3 days later, Joe hosted a small dinner at his apartment. A few colleagues, easy conversation, a night away from the formality of the acquisition. Alicia came as his sister, not as an attorney. She was wearing something comfortable, and she had left her briefcase at the hotel, and she was somewhere close to relaxed, for the first time since she had landed. Ha-yoon arrived 40 minutes in. Mutual acquaintances. A coincidence. That was how it was positioned. She was warm, effortless, the version of herself that rooms full of people found completely natural. She moved through the apartment with the ease of someone who belonged in every space she entered. Then midway through the evening, in a quiet moment near the drinks table with exactly the right people within earshot, Ha-yoon said it, casually, almost as an afterthought. "Isn't there some concern? Legally speaking, when the lead attorney on an acquisition has a personal relationship with the acquiring party." She tilted her head slightly, her expression perfectly composed. "I only asked because someone mentioned it. I'm sure it's nothing." She smiled, moved on, said nothing else. It spread the way things spread in rooms like that, quietly, efficiently, with enough plausible deniability that nobody could point to the moment it started. Joe heard it from across the room. He went completely still. The glass in his hand didn't move. His eyes found Alicia in the other corner. She was mid-conversation, laughing at something, completely unaware. And something in his expression traveled through several places before settling. Somewhere cold. In the car afterward, he told her. Alicia sat with the window down and the night air coming through and said nothing for almost a full minute. "She's escalating," she said finally. "Yes," Joe said. "She went after my professional reputation." "Yes." Another silence, longer. "She's not going to stop," Joe said quietly. "Alicia, whatever this is between you and Seongjin, Ha-yoon has decided the cost of losing it is worth whatever she has to do. You understand what that means?" Alicia looked out the window. The city moved past her. She was very still in the way she went still when she was thinking. Not checked out, completely present, processing everything at once. "It means," she said quietly, "that I need to find all 4 holes." She went to Seojin the next morning, not because she needed him to fix it, because he deserved to know what was being done in the shadow of his name. And because Alicia Collins had never once walked into a situation with incomplete information if she could help it. She went to his office. His assistant started to redirect her. She said, "Tell him it's Alicia Collins," and sat down. 3 minutes later, she was shown in. He was standing when she entered. Something in his expression told her he had already been told she was coming and had not had a calm morning. She sat down across from his desk and told him everything. The meeting time, the document delay, the dinner, Ha-yoon's carefully worded comment and the room it had landed in. She told it the way she presented every case. Clearly, completely, without editorializing or asking for anything. He listened without interrupting. His expression didn't move much, but his stillness changed quality. Became the particular stillness of a man holding something in very carefully. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "How long have you known?" he said. "The meeting time was the first one," she said. 3 days in. Something crossed his face. "You didn't say anything. I handled it." She held his gaze. "I'm telling you now because it has moved into territory that affects your acquisition and your name. That belongs to you. My ability to handle Ha-yoon is my business." He stood, came around the desk, sat on the edge of it, closer than a boardroom distance, not quite personal. He looked at her with the full attention she had felt in the courtroom corridor in the restaurant, and every moment between them since the gala. "Alicia," he said. "Seojin." She met his eyes. "I'm not here asking you to protect me. I'm here giving you information you need. There's a difference." The silence between them was not empty. It was full of everything that had been building since Chicago, since a courthouse corridor and a business card, and 3 years of not calling. "I'm going to speak to Ha-yoon," he said. "That's your choice," Alicia said. She stood, picked up her bag. Then she stopped, turned back. But I want to be clear about something. Whatever she does next, I'm not leaving. Not because of her. He looked at her. Then why are you staying? She held his gaze. You know why. She walked out. And he stood in the middle of his office for a long moment. After the door closed, and felt something that had been held at a careful distance for 3 years move into the room with him and make itself completely at home. He went to Han that evening. She was in her family's sitting room, and she received him with the composed ease of a woman who had been expecting this visit and had prepared for it. She was dressed beautifully, and the room was arranged, and she had decided to make this difficult. He didn't sit down. The arrangement is over, he said. I should have said it 2 years ago. I'm saying it now. Hyun looked at him, her composure held, barely visibly, the way a structure holds when something foundational has just shifted beneath it. Because of her, she said. Because it was never real, he said. And you know that. And I let both our families believe otherwise for 2 years because it was easier than this conversation. That was wrong. I'm correcting it. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was very careful. You're choosing a woman you have known for 3 weeks over everything your family built. I'm choosing honestly, he said, over an arrangement neither of us wanted. She'll leave. Something raw moved briefly across Hyun's face. Past strategy, past composure into something more human. She lives in America, Seo-jin. She has a life that has nothing to do with yours. And when she goes, you'll have burned all of this for nothing. He looked at her steadily. Then that's my decision to make. He left. Hyun stood in the center of the room for a long time after the door closed. The composed architecture of her expression came down slowly, and what was underneath it was not strategy. It was something more human and more dangerous. She had lost the arrangement. She had lost the room. She had lost every move she had made since the gala. And she decided, standing in that sitting room alone, that if she couldn't have what she wanted, then the woman who had taken it was going to pay the full cost of it. 3 days later, the story ran. A Seoul Society publication. Carefully written, nothing explicit, nothing that could be traced directly back to Hyun. But the implication was architectural, and everyone in the right circles read it correctly. A piece about the Kwon family, the arrangement, 2 years of expectation, the quiet question of what happened when outside interests entered a closed world. Alicia's name wasn't in it didn't need to be. Alicia saw it at 6 in the morning, read it once, set her phone on the nightstand, lay there for exactly 4 minutes staring at the ceiling. Then she got up, got dressed, picked up her briefcase, and went to close the deal. The signing took 3 hours. Alicia was the sharpest person in the room, and the most composed, and nobody watching her work would have known that anything had happened. She closed every gap, built the final argument cleanly, and shook hands across the table, with the calm certainty of someone who had come to do a job and had done it completely. Afterward, in the corridor outside the conference room, Seo-jin found her. He started to speak. She stopped him. The deal is closed, she said. That's what I came to Seoul to do. Alicia, I'm not angry, she said, and she meant it. But I need you to understand something. She turned to face him fully. I will not be a story someone else tells about you. If this is real, whatever this is between us, it needs to be said. Out loud, by you. Not because Hyun ran a piece in a publication. Because you mean it. The corridor was not empty. Jiho was at the far end of it. Joe had just come through the door from the other direction. 3 members of the Kwon legal team were visible through the glass behind them. Seo-jin didn't look for a private moment. He didn't lower his voice. He looked at Alicia Collins in that corridor with everyone present, and said what he had been holding at a careful distance since a courthouse in Chicago 3 years ago. Since a business card he had kept in his desk drawer every day since. I mean it, he said. I have meant it since Chicago. Joe stopped walking. Jiho looked briefly at the ceiling. The legal team through the glass exchanged glances. Alicia looked at him for a long moment, the full honest version. The version that didn't perform anything and didn't need to. Okay, she said. Just that word. But the way she said it was quiet and certain and final, and it closed Hyun's chapter so completely that there was nothing left of it. That evening there was a small dinner. Acquisition celebration. Both legal teams, a few principals, good food and the particular warmth of something successfully completed. Hyun arrived. Nobody had invited her. Her family's connection to the Kwon name had given her access, and she had decided to use it one final time. She walked in composed and beautiful and entirely alone, in the particular way of someone who has played every card they had and is standing in the aftermath of it. Seo-jin was already there. Alicia beside him, not performing anything, simply present, herself in this room the same way she was herself in every room. Hyun crossed to them. The table went quiet in that familiar way. She looked at Alicia. Something in her expression had moved past calculation, past strategy, past the champagne and the document delays and the carefully worded dinner comment and the society piece, into something briefly and unexpectedly human. Then she looked at Seo-jin. I hope you know what you have, she said. Not cruel, not composed. Almost genuine, the one true thing she had said since this all began. Then she turned, walked out, did not look back. The room exhaled slowly. Joe met Alicia's eye from across the table. She gave him one look. He sat back, said nothing, and for Joe Collins that was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Alicia's flight was the next morning. She was in the departures hall with her bag on her shoulder when she felt him before she saw him. She turned. Seo-jin was standing 20 feet away. He had not announced he was coming. He looked like a man who had made a decision at some point during the night, and had simply acted on it without deliberating further. She walked to him. "How did you know my flight?" she asked. "Ji-ho," he said. She shook her head slowly. "You have a problem." "Several," he agreed. "You're not one of them." She looked at him. "The full version. I live in Chicago, Seo-jin. My whole life is there." "I know." "No," he said. "It isn't." He held her gaze steadily. "I'm not asking you to move your life. I'm asking you not to move it away from me." She stood with that. Let it settle the way she let every important thing settle. Honestly, completely, without rushing toward an answer she hadn't fully found yet. Then she looked at him and found it. 2 weeks, she said. Then you come to Chicago. Something in his face that was usually kept very carefully behind everything else came fully forward. 2 weeks, he confirmed. She picked up her bag, walked toward the gate. She did not look back. But she was smiling. The real one. The one that didn't announce itself or perform anything. And he saw it from where he was standing and stayed there watching until she was gone. Behind him, Joe arrived slightly out of breath, having absolutely insisted on being present for this moment. He looked at the gate, looked at Seo-jin. "She said 2 weeks, he asked. "Yes. And you're going." Ji-ho already booked the flight. Joe turned. Ji-ho was standing 6 feet away with the expression of a man who had been waiting a very long time for this specific morning. "How long?" Joe asked him. "How long have you been waiting for this?" Ji-ho straightened his jacket. "Since Chicago," he said simply. Joe looked back at the gate where his sister had disappeared. Then he did something he almost never did in professional settings. He smiled, fully, without attempting to moderate it at all. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too. Thank you for watching till the end. If this story touched you, inspired you, or took you on a journey, don't leave without hitting the like button. Subscribe if you haven't, and switch your notifications on. You don't want to miss what I got coming up. Make sure to drop in the comment section where in the world you're watching from. We're building a global community of story lovers here, and your voice is part of it. See you in the next one. Have a great day.